Welcome to my van renovation series. Today I'm going to be explaining how I built my beautiful oak ceiling. This project was done in 3 parts: the sub-ceiling, wood preparation, and installation. When I did demo on my van, I pretty much removed everything except for my existing sub-ceiling, but that too was eventually taken down during my fan installation project, and I reinstalled it during my insulation project. I did make a few adjustments to the sub-ceiling when I reinstalled it so it would fit around my fan, but now looking back, I wish I would have made the wood tighter and closer to the fan instead of having such a big gap, but I did this to try to save on wood. As you can see, my van roof already had studs built into it, so I just screwed the wood up into those studs with short enough screws. Even though I knew I used short enough screws, I got on the roof afterwards just to make sure that nothing went through. If a screw had gone through, I was going to use caulk to cover it up. And the only other thing that I have to say about the sub-ceiling is that when I was screwing up into the studs, I pushed up on the wood as far as I could in the center so I could take advantage of every inch of space that I had. Okay, so I have a really long piece of oak. I think I had 3 pieces of this originally, and it was cut into these really thin pieces by my dad. I think this was like 1/4 of an inch. I don't know, maybe 1/8. I have no idea what he cut them into, but he cut them into these really long pieces, and this is going to be my ceiling. So right now we're about to cut the corners off. We're going to use a router and do a little bit of stuff to this, which you'll see in a minute here, to just give it a little bit of character for when it goes up there. As I said previously, I wanted to give my wood some character by rounding off the edges with a router. A router is a woodwork tool that uses various bit attachments to carve designs into wood. There are so many different design looks that you could do, but I decided to go with a simple round over look for my van. There are great tutorials online to show you how to use this tool if you decide to go this route, but you do not have to go through all this work like I did to get a similar look. I saw some pre-made wood just like this at Lowe's and Home Depot. After you're happy with the size and look of your wood, you can begin sanding. My dad had 3 different types of sanders and I tried them all out and love the one that I'm using in this video, even though it did have a pretty wicked wobble. If you decide to sand by hand, this process is going to take much longer. Sanding alone took me many hours, and I'll be honest, this was one of my least favorite tasks because it was so hard to keep each small strip steady. It was so loud that I couldn't hear a podcast or my music, and there were small black marks on the wood from the table saw, so I had to sand for a really long time in those areas.
See, I can do it.
Well, it looks like you did a pretty good job. The last job for the wood preparation portion of this project was staining. My sweet niece and mother helped me out with this task. You're so good at this, Mom.
You just want me to do it.
No, I'm being serious.
You're giving me positive encouragement because you don't do it.
We did 1 coat of stain and then 3 coats of clear coat. In between each coat, we allowed the wood to fully dry and then used a fine piece of sandpaper to knock off any uneven areas of the clear coat before applying the next. And this is what all the wood looked like while it was drying. I absolutely love the color. I love the wood grain. I absolutely just love this ceiling. Now we're at the last part of the building of the ceiling. So I drew a diagram out for you guys here. This is the top view of the van. So this is the outside of the van, like the bare bones, the fiberglass van roof and the metal. So then you can start to see like the things that I built. So I built my closet, and then I built upper cabinet faces that go right here, parallel. And then I did side cabinet faces that go this way and this way. So one important thing to be mindful of is that when I built these, I didn't like these aren't perfectly straight on each side. Like these aren't this distance right here and this distance right here, they're different. So I actually made a mistake when I built this upper cabinet because it's diagonal a little bit. And that's important because then if this is diagonal, then that means that everything coming along here is going to be good up until that corner, because I'm going to need more right here, and it's going to be like this. The angle is going to be something like that. So that's one thing to be mindful of. I think that I did a pretty good job on keeping these ones straight. And then I think I did a good job of keeping this one straight, but that's because I didn't actually make this an upper cabinet. This was just to like make the face look pretty. And I can go into all this in my upper cabinet video, but it's important for this video just so that you understand the challenge that I personally had to deal with. So the first thing that you want to do when you're starting your installation part of this build, you're going to want to take all of these different measurements that I have laid out here. So you're going to want the length on this short little section right here, the length for these longer pieces, and then I wrote 2 right here. You want to take the length twice. You don't want to just do 1 and then assume it's the same all the way across, because one thing that I learned from my entire van build is that you're gonna really pay for assuming that everything is the same, because it's not all the same. When you're building stuff, you got to measure twice, 4 times even on both sides if you really wanted to like make sure that everything is good. But length on each side. And then you're gonna wanna measure the width on this side and then this side. This little section is kind of its own thing. So we have pretty much 2 things going here, these longer pieces and then these leftover pieces. And that's not even including like these weird portions where we start to get to the outside, which I'll go into later. But so yeah, you'll want to take the length and width of both of these 2 sections. And then one thing that I would do if I were you that I did not do is I would, before you even install your upper cabinets, this upper cabinet face, this upper cabinet face, this side face, upper cabinet face, before you do any of that, and while there's nothing up top in your van, I would, as soon as you install that sub ceiling, I would make a line of the halfway mark. Because for me, it was hard to find the halfway mark because like these distances are different. So I don't have that distance directly down in the center. I had to guess this distance, or I guess my dad had another tool, so I didn't necessarily have to guess. So I got lucky because he had the proper equipment. But if you don't have that piece of equipment that draws a line on the ceiling, it's like a laser that points a line across the ceiling. If you don't have that, then you're really going to want to make sure that you have this measurement, because when we started in the middle and we began to move outward.
After you measure everything out twice, you can organize all the wood pieces based on size to help speed things up during the install. I did 1 pile of long pieces and then 1 pile of short pieces. After everything is organized, you want to find that very center line that I talked to you about just a moment ago. You could measure this out yourself, or you could use a laser level that shoots a laser beam to keep you lined up. And you can actually faintly see that green line on the ceiling if you look close. My dad set this up, so I really can't tell you for certain if there was any mathematics involved, but my guess is that he just set it up and then eyeballed it and we got started. My job was to go grab the pieces, measure them out, cut, and then give them to my dad. And my dad's job was to put a line of wood glue on the back of the oak, and then Brad nailed the pieces into the sub-ceiling. I'm not going to teach you guys how to use power tools, but I will give you some tips for cutting these really flimsy pieces, because I promise you, they break easy. And if you just barely got enough to do the job, you really can't afford to break too many pieces, otherwise you'll have to repeat the whole first 2 parts of this video. So with all that being said, tip 1 is to make sure that the blade is up to speed before cutting down. So don't hold down and immediately start cutting right away. Tip 2 is to place another piece of wood on top of the one that you're cutting just a few inches away from the blade to keep the bottom piece from bouncing around. Not doing either of these 2 things may result in your precious oak pieces that you worked so hard to craft from splitting or breaking. If you have a vent fan, you need to make sure that the pieces are short enough that they don't run into the inside vent cover, but long enough that they go underneath the lip for a nice finished look. Once we got a few pieces on the ceiling, I double checked by inserting the cover. We continued with our system until the sun went down and realized that we should probably go to bed. Another tip I have for you is to think about the amount of time it will take you to complete a job, and then multiply that time by 3. So my camera ended up dying when I was doing my demonstration, and I did kind of a really poor job of documenting everything because it was hard to learn how to build things that I've never built before and try to learn videography at the same time. So this is present day after my van tour. I'm going to show you guys where I left off. We left off with doing these pieces right here, and then we came down here, and what we did was we measured this distance right here. So this is like 14 inches, and we made sure that these long pieces were 14 inches apart. So we put all of them on here, and then by the time we got to the end, when we were putting like our last piece in, it was too big of a gap. So we had to take all of them down, which wasn't that hard, which was kind of concerning because I was like, oh, these shouldn't be able to come down that easy. But so far, I've traveled in this van for like 3 trips already. 1 was like a month long, and then 2 were like other weekend trips, and I have not noticed any problems with the way that I did the ceiling. But we had to take all of these down, and then I had to put a little spacer, like I just folded up a piece of paper on each side, and then I put them back in, and then they ended up being good. But if you really paid attention really close, and I'll put the video on, you can see that there's a small gap in between here, and you can kind of see that sub ceiling. But it's not the biggest deal in the world. Unless you know from me telling you, you would never notice. That after we did this section up there that I just talked about, me and my dad went over here and filled in these. Actually, this was kind of his thing. He did this corner. But once he got to the side and this side, so I was telling you guys about this in the demonstration video, all these corners, since everything is not straight, we had to try to get it curved. So this is the tool that we use to do that. It is a block plane, and when you flip it over, it's kind of just got this blade. So then you take the wood and you literally do a motion like this. So it's shaving off whatever you don't need. And so that was the easiest way to get our pieces into like that triangle. So if it didn't fit, then we just take it down and then do it some more. And we pretty much did that until it fit. And some of the pieces had to be like really pretty thin. And so if you look up here, like you can kind of see how this piece, you know, it starts off big down here, and then it starts to move slowly inward, and then you go all the way down, and it just kind of disappears. We didn't just leave it like that because there was a little gap between the ceiling and like the upper cabinet faces. So I think that we cut this down into like man, it's so hard to remember some of the sizes that we did. But whatever distance this is, we decided on. I thought it looked good. So we cut down all of the trim for the side pieces to be this length. So I have the same size here and over on this side, which just kind of, I think, helped merge the upper cabinet to the ceiling. And then on the front and back, instead of bringing it down onto the cabinets, I did kind of another thing, which was putting a piece all along here. Ooh, that doesn't look very good. Obviously, I did a bad job of filling this in. But at the end here, instead of bringing the ceiling down, I just put these pieces long ways right here. So I got one right there. I got one right here that doesn't look very, you know, it's not that one's not the best looking. And then up here, there's one right there. So after you get the corners put in and then you have the trim put on, the very last step to the process is just filling in all of the nail holes. So you can use whatever type of nail filler that you find at the store that matches with your stain or type of wood. And then just come in and fill it in. And there's going to be a lot of holes from Brad nailing up in there, but you know, it's going to look a lot better once you get those in there. And that's pretty much it for the ceiling. I think there's nothing else that I think that you would have to do besides installing the vent cover if you decide to install a vent fan, obviously. But yeah, besides that, that would be pretty much everything. So thank you guys for watching. I hope that this video was helpful to you. If you end up using this idea for your ceiling, definitely send me some pictures somehow, maybe over on Instagram, or just comment. And if you can like copy and paste a picture, that would be awesome. If you can't, Instagram. But have a beautiful day. Bye.